Can you speak a little bit more about some of the learnings you may have had from that? Because I heard some of the framing and questioning was around sort of how this fit for the community and what you were learning. And can you share a bit more about those things?
We were honored to have that opportunity to learn a new screening tool and really think about, is this really necessary, right? Do we really need to do this? What we found with the training is our staff felt, this is worth a try. Let's check this out. They really liked the tool. There was some feedback around some of the materials that were used as part of the play-based assessment that they thought this is a toy or something that our kids wouldn't really recognize, or this just doesn't make sense, and can we change it to something else that our children would recognize? So that was something that came up. A few of our staff have utilized the tool sort of as a practice, right? And with families that were okay with it. And we have a number of staff who actually want to become trained to use it. Certified to utilize it. And one of the strategies we're thinking about, like one of the active practices we do in all of our programs, is we do administer the ASQ and the ASQ SE, and it's something that we do. We like to have it like every 2 or twice a year, so every 6 months. And if there's a child that may be coming up with some, there's more questions, or I don't like using the word flag. We may do it again. And it's something that our families are quite comfortable using the tool. We haven't heard a lot of sort of negative feedback other than, well, we just did this at the health nurse's office, right? So, but that's more about collaborating and sharing that information so our parents aren't feeling overwhelmed. So one of our strategies moving forward with the tool is we would also like to use it with all of our 2-year-olds in our programs, just as a way of going, can we get these services in place faster if they're identified as being more at risk? So it's sort of, I'm not a big fan of labels and all of that sort of thing either, but the reality is the world that we're living in and the services, we need it. Like those labels in order to get the doctor to listen to us, to refer us to the pediatrician, and then for us to obtain the funding that we need. So you sort of need to toe the line, I suppose. But we think if there's issues that are coming up, maybe it's not that they're going to, eventually going to get that diagnosis of autism, but it's highlighting something that maybe our staff and our programs can be doing in terms of an intervention or an activity, or something that our parents can be doing in the home that would just help to enhance the learning and the grasping of that particular skill. So it's still quite new, so we can't say we absolutely love it, but the staff are going, we want to give this a try and look to get certified. So that's what I have to say about that. Yeah. Now with the RIT, I think I'm going to let Rona speak a little bit more to that. And I just think it's about our intervention and our work and our relationship building with the families, right? So having it like, we're going to coach you to do this, or we're going to, that just doesn't really sit with our Indigenous families, right? So it's more about just modeling in a natural sort of way. And, because often we just learn by watching, not going, I'm doing this or that. So it's something I think the staff appreciated learning, but how do they incorporate that into their daily home visiting? Now, our staff in our community, we have 4 home visitors that come from a diverse background, from Bachelor of Education to infant development through the UBC program, through just lived experience. And most of our home visitors are from our community, are closely connected to our community. And our home visiting is a universal program. It's interesting, in our community, we're actually wanting to work more closely with our delegated agency, but we're not getting the referrals. So it's interesting where, if you looked at our caseload, we have some shared files, but it's very few compared to the actual families that are wanting to have a home visitor. And it's like, we're more like the aunties. If we're going to indigenize it, we're like the aunties, right? And we're there to to sort of help out and so forth. But our families, we try to visit them once a week, right? And some of our home visitors have been with the family since the babies were born and sort of follow them all the way into preschool and so forth, which is quite interesting. So I think it's actually around the writ. It's sort of too early to sort of really make comments, and I'd like to have a bigger discussion.
We have another question from somebody who is working in an Indigenous community and wants to know, how do you ask the questions about, tell me your family story, how does this work into the culture that, what should I know about the culture of this community?
I think just ask. And like Grace said, we're pretty forthright. Maybe other folks aren't as much as we are, but
These are the differences in nations.
Yeah, we appreciate just sort of putting it out there and ask the question in a respectful way, and own that you don't know everything. You don't have to know everything, and that you want to learn. And I think that's always a really great starting place, because it's humble and it's honest.
I think what's really important as well for Indigenous and non-Indigenous folk, just because I'm Indigenous, I may not know how to behave properly in the Stolo territory, right? There's things that I, as an Indigenous person, would need to reach out and learn, and not assume that because I'm Indigenous, I know everything about all other Indigenous people. I remember being a young social work student and having to go on the island. I think it was Penelakut Island. It was like a culture camp. My mind was blown because it was so different and I'd never experienced it before, right? I just thought we all did this, right? So that was sort of my introduction to, I have to check myself as an Indigenous person, and just be really respectful. And so I think the question is like, well, how do you do that? And I think it's through your spirit and through your energy that you're bringing into that community and into that relationship. We can tell pretty easily if the sincerity is there or not, right? And I think it's just being honest and just saying, I don't know how to act here. Like, give me a hand, right? And I would really be mindful of some of those pan-Indigenous concepts that are out there. If you were an early intervention specialist or a home visitor and you were working in our nation, if you thought bringing an activity, it could be coloring or whatever it is, or a puzzle, and it had a dream catcher on it, I'd probably kick you out, right? Because that's just not, it's Indigenous to another nation, and that's beautiful, and they have really sacred and special teachings about it. Right? But what I see as an Indigenous person, and I see it happening within ourselves as well, and I think it relates to a loss of culture or knowledge and language as a result of a lot of those colonial measures, is sometimes we don't know. So we, like for example, at our own center, there's huge dream catchers hanging. I'm like, ah! Which I'm totally cool with, as long as the children are being taught, right, where that comes from and how is it that we honor it and what does that mean for me. But I think for the person asking the question, I think it's just about being really sincere, and it comes through not right away. It comes through the relationship building, and it comes through telling and sharing a bit about yourself. Where did you come from? Where did your family come from? How'd you end up in Canada, right? Like, feel free to share those stories as well. And I think if Canadians in general took more time to just learn about the past and the current lived realities of Indigenous people in this country, just on a bigger scale, there are a lot of commonalities in terms of theft of land and what are the treaties and what does that look like here. Like I had somebody like, oh, treaty, like do you guys do treaty days? And I'm like, I can't even really talk about what a treaty is because it's just so foreign to me, right? Because that's just something we don't do here. But just taking the time And there are a lot of resources and a lot of really great literature out there that non-Indigenous people have access to, but to take the time to be willing to be challenged on your privilege, to be challenged on your power and the place that you hold. And that's why I'm still a little mind blown, Allison, by your comments, because it's just so rare that we hear that. And I think for non-Indigenous people, whether you're an academic, whether you're working in government, and if you hold that knowledge about what you said, Grace, a workshop ain't gonna cut it. It's just not, right? But for non-Indigenous people to take those conversations and have them with your colleagues. Because I think as Indigenous people, we get tired of being asked, right? I have one of my daughters, she's 24, and she's just all about, we got to decolonize everything, right? So she challenges me a lot, right? And she gets asked, and, she's like, go figure it out. We have to figure out your system. You go, so it's just about taking the initiative to learn, number one, sort of the bigger picture context of what's happening in Canada and what has happened for Canadians, and then bringing it in, okay, what nation am I actually working on, right? And what does that mean? How do I pronounce it? How many bands, right? Who are the people I might need to talk to about, right? And then just sort of bringing it in. So, and I think as interventionists or home visitors or people working with children in our communities, I think it's about just having the right intent and the right spirit and being open to seeing and learning things that maybe you're just not even aware of, and that's okay. So